calling People versus David Anthony Burke. That's case number 26 CJC F02399.
Good morning or good afternoon, Your Honor. Blair Burke, Marilyn Bednarski, and Regina Peter on behalf of our client, David Burke, who's in custody.
Thank you, and good afternoon.
So Blair Burke, her father is part of the American Board of Criminal Lawyers, which was a good friend of my former law partner. And I've actually spoken to her on occasion. So Blair Burke has also represented Britney Spears and a number of high-profile celebrities. Whether she actually tries this case or not remains to be seen.
Mr. Burke, for the people.
Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman for the people, Your Honor.
Thank you. And counsel, on behalf of your client, do you waive formal reading of the complaint, advisement of rights, including armed forces and veterans' rights, enter a plea of not guilty, denying any and all special allegations, enhancements, and priors?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you're requesting a preliminary hearing within the period?
Yes, Your Honor. From the media reports, apparently there have been 4 months of secret grand jury proceedings. We believe that Mr. Burke is entitled at the earliest opportunity to an open preliminary hearing and the proceedings not be done in secret. So we are asking for a preliminary.
Preliminary hearings are never done in secret. That's a statement designed for the cameras.
Hearing to be set at the earliest possible date on the 10th day. Your Honor, we believe the actual evidence will show David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez. You
generally don't do this at a preliminary hearing, or not at an arraignment. This is an arraignment. That's where you plead, basically not guilty, or have the charges read to you, and then they usually enter a not guilty plea.
Hernandez, nor was he the cause of her death, and we would like to be able to have the evidence come into the light of day at the earliest opportunity in order to establish that. We're asking for April 23rd as a 3 of 10, Your Honor.
Anything from the people?
We'll be very happy to put on the evidence.
We'll be very happy. Oh, look at that little cat fight going on there. I shouldn't say that because that's very sexist for me to say, but that's who I am. I'm sexist. But I want catfight. We'll be very happy to show that your piece of shit client murdered this woman.
That we've collected in this case in the last several months.
Thank you. So the matter will be set.
You see if she does this number, that's like, I got you, girl. Fuck it. That really, this whole thing between these two lawyers right now, that's for the cameras. That is 100% for the cameras. So he's got top-notch legal representation, but they're starting out in a hole. I don't care how fucking great your lawyer is. I don't care how beautiful your lawyer is. I don't care how expensive your lawyer is. Lawyers can't change the facts of a case. They just can't. So how are you going to get those body parts back together and make them not dismembered? Not going to happen. How do you get those body parts out of a fucking bag and, it's not going to happen. How do you get those body parts that are in a bag out of a fucking trunk? It ain't going to happen. And how do you get those body parts that were in a bag in a trunk that are in his fucking Tesla? How are you going to change that? No lawyer is going to change that. But what they can do is try to create, reasonable doubt. And that's all they have to do.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I say fun-filled, but it's a dark episode. We'll tell you what it's about in a second, but I'm your board-certified criminal defense lawyer here at your pleasure. Not Robert's pleasure, your pleasure. Today we're reacting to David. David got indicted. Indicted. He got arrested, indicted. You know who David is. We'll talk a little bit more about who he is, and what he's accused of, and how heinous this crap is. But before we get to that, this is brought to you by AskALawyer.com. AskALawyer.com is a very friendly and inexpensive way for you to get legal advice. You could go online and go to ChatGPT or, and not really know if what you're getting is accurate. You go to AskALawyer.com, You got accurate information from a living, breathing, licensed lawyer. Why is that important? Because when you get into court, if you give a brief or something and it's fake, they give you fake cases, well, you're going to get thrown right out of court. So go to askalawyer.com, and they do have an AI component that's trained in all the 50 states, but you put that with a real lawyer, you got a good tool for $49. Askalawyer.com. If you have a problem with your landlord, you have a problem with an elder law case, whatever your issue is, go to askalawyer.com. My grandma's in the basement right now trying to figure out how she can legally screw me. And she's trying to use askalawyer.com because you know what they're telling her? That you got a good grandson there. He's, I know he locks you in the basement, but you've got your Cheeto stain nightie. You're going to be okay. So askalawyer.com. The same people that brought you eForm and eSign, good folks. I use both of those actually. So go to askalawyer.com. Okay, David, he's a pop guy. He started out internet and he did Fortnite, the video game streaming and all this other stuff.
I'm from Queens, New York. I'm in Houston now. I am a gamer. I love video games. I wanted to be a professional gamer before music. That's actually what pushed me into music.
And he also did this song called Romantic Homicide. Now, when we first started our channel, our very first reaction was Murder on My Mind by YNW Melly, who's still in jail, by the way. We're going to have to do a reaction to him soon because I think his trial's coming up because he's been tried, I think, once or twice for that homicide. He's had a couple hung juries. But now he's got Portland, so Portland's going to testify against him. But I digress. So let's just read some of the lyrics. I'm scared. It feels like you don't care. Enlighten me, my dear. Why am I still here? I don't mean to be complacent with the decisions you made, but why? In the back of my mind, you died, and I didn't even cry. No, not a single tear. And I'm sick of waiting patiently for someone that won't even arrive. In the back of my mind, I killed you, and I didn't even regret it. I can't believe I said it, but it's true. I hate you. That's a dark heart, isn't it? Dark heart. And if you watch that video, it's a dark video. It's so dark. There was a 14-year-old female that was killed, young lady, by the name of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Okay. She ran away from home, was hanging out with David, and all of a sudden she turns up dead in the trunk of his car. That one on the side of the road. And where was he at the time? He was on tour. The car got towed and brought into, an impound lot. And one of the workers there walked by the car. It really fucking stinks. So he called the police because he thought it smelled suspicious. And they opened the trunk, and there she is, dead in the trunk of his Tesla. We can't protect our kids from themselves all the time, How sad for this family, the Rivas Hernandez family. You grow up. You start out, you're a baby. Babies are whatever. I'm not a fan of babies. In fact, I'm against babies. I'm going to go on the record and say I'm anti-baby. I'm not really anti-baby. But, but then all of a sudden they get fun. They turn into toddlers. Like my son, Michael, he was driving down the road with my dad, and he was going through a Montessori program. He was just a little guy. And somebody cut my dad off, and my dad said, you stupid sucker. And right in front of my son. And Michael, without missing a beat, Grandpa, we don't say stupid. Sucker's just fine. Anyway, they're fun. They're just, and you can control them, right? Because they're dependent upon you for everything. Well, and they're a little scary because, you fall over and hit the corner on a table or something. You don't want them to get, but they're so innocent and pure. And as they start to get more and more independent, like starting to turn teenagers, starting to drive or starting to just go off for overnight someplace, or, you can't control that, right? And so they're more dangerous than fucking toddlers, honestly. The other thing is, you take an object, right? If you have an infant and you take an object, put it in the front of their face, and then you take it away, it doesn't exist to them because they don't have perspective. They don't have permanency. Same thing with people who are teenagers. They don't have the foresight or the wisdom to see what their consequences of their actions are going to be down the road. They can't see what's going to happen tomorrow. You got somebody who's following around a pop star like this, she'll do whatever he says, right? And if she doesn't, she winds up in the fucking trunk of a car. How fucking sad is this? This is just so sad. this is what we know. We know that David was arrested. And he was arrested while, they're preparing to bring the case file to the district attorney's office. You remember when we did it? We did our first video on this like 6 months ago. The grand jury was convened, I think in December or something like that. I remember on TMZ, they were talking about there's an issue with the cops saying that they're presenting this to the district attorney's office, and then the district attorney's office having this in front of the grand jury for 5 months. Well, if there's an indictment that's sealed, they're not going to let that be known, right? So there's a little bit of cloak and dagger going on. So they arrest him. He's being held without bail, right? So now he's been indicted. So the Los Angeles District, this is from I think the press release. Yeah, from the LA District Attorney's Office. Victims decomposed and dismembered remains found in David's vehicle. Los Angeles District Attorney Nathan J. Hochman announced that musician David Anthony Burke, known as David, was charged today with murdering 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, whose body was found decomposed and dismembered in his car that had been impounded in September 2025. That's how long it took. And here's one of the things. Her body was in that car for an extended period of time. So one of the things that you're going to have is decomposition, which can affect, the investigation. It can affect how you determine cause of death. Celeste was just under 14 years old when David Burke allegedly engaged in repeated lewd and lascivious sexual relations with her, according to Hochman. But Burke's actions did not allegedly stop there. When she threatened to expose his criminal conduct and devastate his musical career, Burke allegedly murdered her, cut up her body, and stuffed her body into bags that were placed in the front of his car. There, the dismembered body sat for over 4 months, decomposing until it was found at a tow yard on September 8, 2025. The horrific and gruesome murder committed by the charged sexual predator is shocking and appalling, according to the DA. Celeste's loved ones will get the justice they deserve. He was charged with 1 count of each of murder, continuous sexual abuse of a child under the age of 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains. So when you have this type of case, it really is a circumstantial case. Unless it's a dying declaration, things that she says generally don't come into evidence. There's a rule called Rule 807. It's like if it has sufficient indicia of reliability, then it can come into evidence. But generally, dead men tell no tales. There are exceptions to that. But this is going to be a tough case for the government. It just is. The criminal complaint also included special circumstances, allegations of murder of a witness, murder for financial gain, and lying in wait, as well as a special allegation that Burke personally used a deadly and dangerous weapon, a sharp instrument, to commit the crime. So the medical examiner has got to determine 2 things. 1, manner of death. And the manner of death is usually one of 5 things. It's either homicide, suicide, natural causes, accident, or unexplained. It's one of those 5 things. And so I don't think they had too much. When you see somebody that's cut up, it's like, that's a homicide. There's no fucking question it's a homicide. But getting from there to cause of death is another thing altogether. And we don't know exactly what the cause of death in this thing is yet, except for possibly blunt force trauma or some kind of stabbing. So in April 2025, Burke invited the victim to his home in the Hollywood Hills. Celeste arrived at the defendant's house and was never seen again. I mean, this is why, let me tell you something. If you're a teenager watching this, unless you're being really abused at home, and if you are, then go to a shelter, be really careful who you spend your time with. Do what you got to do to get good grades, stay in school. I know people in fucking high school just are shit. I mean, I had the worst time in high school, quite honestly. I was bullied. That's why I am who I am. I'm an asshole now. No, I'm just joking. But I was bullied in high school. High school was not fun. College is fun. I had a blast in college. Law school was even better. I started getting better grades. And now look at me. I mean, I've got my own law practice. We got this channel. I've had some setbacks, Michael's death and, a lot of other things, but hey, I'm living, breathing. I got a beautiful daughter and I got a boat and condo and the trappings of a good life. And I got a brand new motorcycle. I mean, life is good. So when you're sitting there thinking about how shitty things are and you're going to turn to some dickhead for your salvation, be awfully careful. The victim's decomposed and dismembered remains were found in the front trunk. So it's a Tesla, so they get multiple trunks, I guess, of the car registered to Burke that had been impounded after the vehicle had been reported abandoned. If convicted as charged, he faces the death penalty or life in a state prison without the possibility of parole. So this is California now. A decision on whether to seek the death penalty will be made at a later date. The case is being prosecuted by Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman of the Major Crimes Division and remains under investigation by the Los Angeles Police Department Robbery Homicide Division. They have their work cut out for them. My guess is that somewhere along the line, David fucked up. David told somebody something, or there is some piece of evidence that has to lay in his. That can't just be his car, because anybody could have done that, right? But they're going to be mark my words, there's going to be electronic information that they get. I had a case where my client was the head of a pharmacy, network of pharmacies, right? There was an allegation that he drugged this woman and had sex with her. And he got her on a dating app and she sends him this text message. This is what you get after 3 beers. And she's holding up a beer and she's standing there in her bra and panties. Well, he had deleted all of his text messages. So we needed to get that back because that was critical information. And so we got all the text messages back because you can do a forensic analysis and recover that stuff, right? I guarantee you that's happening here. I guarantee you that's happening here. The best thing to do for him would have been just to put his device, 30 leagues under the sea. And in that case that I just told you about, no charges at all, because we did a whole bunch of other stuff in that case. Mark my words, they're gonna recover things that were deleted. They're gonna recover communications between the two of them, and if it's his own words, that's not hearsay. That's called statement of a party opponent. And the other thing that they're gonna look at is her cell phone data, his cell phone data. Look at the tracking. This is when we think it happened, and all of a sudden he flees, right? And why would he leave his car there? Sometimes, so that when you have a circumstantial case, I know the law doesn't prefer circumstantial versus direct evidence. Direct evidence is I saw him plunge a knife into her chest. The circumstantial would be her dead body is found in his car. How else would that get there? Why would it be in his car? Among other things. But another example of circumstantial evidence is, it snowed. There are wagon wheel tracks through there. There must have been a wagon train that went through here, right? You can just kind of make that connection. And that's what is going to happen here. So let's break down the charges. Continuous sexual abuse of a child. So they must have some evidence that he had sex with this 14-year-old. The thing about it is, when you are dealing with criminal sexual conduct charges and your victim is under 15 years old, consent is never a defense, number one. Number two, mistake of age, generally, if they're under 15, is not a defense. So murder, obviously we know murder is. Murder for financial gain. Now what are we talking about there? Are we talking about, she's a potential witness? Because the next one is murder to prevent testimony. So was she planning on ruining him, and he's trying to silence her to keep his fortune? Murder by lying in wait. That means, okay, and that's like premeditation, right? That's me hiding in the bushes, and I'll say, see you come out, and I attack you. So use of a deadly weapon, that's something that's forensically figured out. There might be lacerations consistent with a knife. Mutilation of human remains, i.e. the body parts in multiple bags. The thing about it is, I think of all the rotten things somebody could do to somebody, right? You know, I mean, I think about the person that you fucking hate the most, ex-wife. No, I'm joking. I don't. But I mean, certainly, you know, those kinds of things cross your mind, ex-wife. And when you think of that person that you really despise or that you really, you know, kind of fucked you over, ex-wife, what you do is you don't fucking kill them, right? You move on. You move beyond, you know, the turmoil that you went through, ex-wife. Go to hell. No, I'm totally joking. I really am joking. We get along just fine. Stay on your side of town. Here's the thing. Not in a million years do I wish any harm to anybody, ex-wife. I mean, you just don't do that. You know, I mean, and so what? So she's going to take your fucking medicine. You know, you commit a capital crime in order to preserve I mean, that's a 21-year-old brain thinking there, right? What is the one main rule? You never commit a felony to avoid a misdemeanor. Well, you don't create greater harm or greater risk than what you would otherwise suffer. Is it possible she might come forward and say, hey, I'm pregnant. You need to pay for this baby. He's like, fuck, you're 14. I can't have anybody knowing that you're pregnant. I mean, maybe that was the case. And if that's the case, well, let's just fucking deal with it. Let's pay her a shit ton of money and hopefully we can shut her up. Kobe Bryant. Remember what Kobe Bryant did? I mean, he was being charged in Colorado. Remember that? And all of a sudden, she's just not talking anymore. Why is that? Show me the money. So the grand jury has indicted him, right? And here's what a grand jury is. It's 18 to 23 people. They sit for a term, and it can be 6 to 18 months generally. And it's a secret process. So when Harvey Levine tries to tell you he knows everything that's going on in the grand jury room, no, you don't, buddy. No, you don't. And I don't mean to impugn Harvey Levine, except if I don't like him, he's a prick. No, I'm joking. So, but you don't know what's going on in the grand jury process. So, but here's the thing. It's a charging tool, an investigative tool. That's all it is. It gives the prosecutor subpoena power so he can compel people to go before the grand jury. There's no judge. And there's no defense lawyer. So if I'm David's lawyer, he goes before the grand jury and he wants to testify, which I would never have him do that to begin with. But lawyer can't even be in the room. If they have a question, they can stop, come out, ask you the question, and then go back to the grand jury. All they are deciding is whether there's probable cause on every count that he's, charged with. So it is important to note that probable cause is the lowest standard in our system. It's just slightly more true than not. And that's all it is. So he was arrested. Then they have a detention hearing, and he's being held without bail because of the severity of the charges. And from a defense standpoint, Robert says, what's his lawyer doing right now? Well, he's picking his ass. So here's what the defense team is doing at this point. They are sifting through. Well, they don't have the discovery probably quite yet. One of the things that they'll do is sign a protective order to protect sensitive information from the public and from to protect the family and that kind of thing. So they won't be able to share this information, generally speaking. But it's a circumstantial case. So when you look at the timeline of things, well, he was over in Minneapolis when this happened, so he couldn't have done it. You try to create avenues of plausibility in terms of he didn't do this. This isn't one of the cases where you could say, well, he did it, but he had a darn good reason. Because there's no really legitimate affirmative defense you can say that, well, I just got scared, so I cut up the body. So Robert's got some questions here. And so the defense team is asking for a preliminary hearing so a judge can decide whether there's enough evidence for trial. Burke is entitled under California law to have the evidentiary hearing within 10 court days of his arraignment. The DA said, we'll be happy to put on the evidence that we've collected. So question, how could this hearing derail the prosecution? I don't think it could. Doesn't the defense already have the right to know what evidence they have against him? They do, but this gives them an opportunity to cross-examine witnesses that, and in a preliminary hearing, they don't have to have, they can present hearsay evidence where you normally couldn't present hearsay. And so like a agent of the government or, a detective can summarize what the evidence is. And you get a chance to prod and push and test their resolve in a hearing. But then again, keep in mind, it only has to meet probable cause standard. So let's just take a look at his arrest. He had to know this was coming. I'm just surprised that it took this long to make it happen. He's a little fella, isn't he? Pretty uneventful arrest, obviously. And let's take a look at some comments from the DA. Pretty little girl. Although it's not like if she was ugly that this would be any less heinous. We always do that, don't we? We focus on people's looks and say, oh, what a shame she's so pretty. Like if she was an ugly little girl, that it would be, oh, that's okay, she was ugly. And we don't.
Mr. Burke, Miss Celeste remains. Her dismembered and decomposed remains were found in 2 bags inside of a front trunk of a car registered to Mr. Burke.
Now, here's the deal. When you think about being a lawyer in a case like this where you're defending somebody, you start out in a fucking hole because you got a dismembered body in bags all over the place. So you got to have a plan B. You have to have an alternative perpetrator because it can't be you.
Thereafter began an investigation. The investigation was to determine who killed, who murdered Celeste months and months before. That investigation was carried out in unison and in partnership between the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division and the District Attorney's Office. At every point in the investigation, through the arrest and the filing of charges, the LAPD and the District Attorney's Office have worked in lockstep. There's been no disagreements amongst these entities in deciding how to proceed with this case, ultimately leading to these charges today. So what you have...
You look at that little girl, and I'm going to call her a little girl because that's exactly what she is. She's a child. And, they come out of the womb, just a blank slate. They start out just, with hope and dreams, and to end, as, discarded body parts. How fucking awful for this family.
What you have as well with these charges is that, again, there are 3 sets of charges that have been brought. The first-degree murder with special circumstances, and again, those special circumstances are lying in wait. That Celeste went to Mr. Burke's home on the night of April 23rd, 2025, as alleged in the complaint, at his invitation.
So they've done their homework on this, and that's all electronic data. I guarantee it.
Again, was not heard from again. The second is a special circumstance being that this murder was committed for financial gain. As the evidence will show in court, the financial gain was for Mr. Burke to maintain his very lucrative musical career that Celeste was threatening on that particular night.
And how do they know that? Text messages? Probably other people that were around that night?
The third charge, in addition to lying in wait and for financial gain, is murdering a witness to an investigation. In this particular case, as the evidence will come out in court, the witness to the investigation was Celeste. And the investigation was into the lewd and lascivious sexual acts committed by Mr. Burke that is the subject of count 2 of this complaint, with Celeste while she was under 14 years old.
So when you have that kind of case, when you have a predator and general murder cases, where it's like, let's say Nick came over to my house and I shot him, and I said I shot him because he threatened me, well, juries will sit on the edge of their seat and, okay, tell me what happened. I want to know the story. That's why I like those kind of cases, because, you can tell a story. When you have this kind of case or any kind of like sex case, I guarantee you sit down and with your client on the counsel table, the jury looks at your client. Not like, oh, let's find out what happened and let's just unsolve this murder risk. No, they're like, the fuck did he do? Honestly, I know that's how the jurors think. They're supposed to come with a clean slate. They're supposed to, I have an open mind. I can wait until all the evidence is in. Bullshit. You picture that guy doing what the judge just told you he's accused of. And so it's very difficult for the defense team because, in every criminal sexual conduct case, there's three parties. There's the perpetrator, there's the victim, and then there's the rescuer, right? And the rescuer is always the jury. But who are they going to rescue? And the trick in this is to say, my client is the victim here because he's being falsely accused. And then you want them to think of either the government or the complaining witnesses as the perpetrators. It's very difficult in a case like this where she's dead in bags in his trunk. Unbelievable. And then how do you have him testify? So let's take a look at his not guilty plea.
Calling People versus David Anthony Burke. That's case number 26 CJC F02399.
Good morning or good afternoon, Your Honor. Blair Burke, Marilyn Bednarski, and Regina Peter on behalf of our client, David Burke, who's in custody.
Thank you, and good afternoon.
So Blair Burke, her father is part of the American Board of Criminal Lawyers, which was a good friend of my former law partner. And I've actually spoken to her on occasion. So Blair Burke has also represented Britney Spears and a number of high-profile celebrities. Whether she actually tries this case or not remains to be seen.
Mr. Burke, for the people.
Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman for the people, Your Honor.
Thank you. And counsel, on behalf of your client, do you waive formal reading of the complaint, advisement of rights, including armed forces and veterans' rights, enter a plea of not guilty, denying any and all special allegations, enhancements, and priors?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you're requesting a preliminary hearing within the period?
Yes, Your Honor. From the media reports, apparently there have been 4 months of secret grand jury proceedings. We believe that Mr. Burke is entitled at the earliest opportunity to an open preliminary hearing and the proceedings not be done in secret. So we are asking for a preliminary.
Preliminary hearings are never done in secret. That's a statement designed for the cameras.
Hearing to be set at the earliest possible date on the 10th day. Your Honor, we believe the actual evidence will show David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez.
You generally don't do this at a preliminary hearing, or not at an arraignment. This is an arraignment. That's where you plead, basically not guilty, or have the charges read to you, and then they usually enter a not guilty plea.
Hernandez, nor was he the cause of her death, and we would like to be able to have the evidence come into the light of day at the earliest opportunity in order to establish that. We're asking for April 23rd as a 3 of 10, Your Honor.
Anything from the people?
We'll be very happy to put on the evidence.
We'll be very happy. Oh, look at that little cat fight going on there. I shouldn't say that because that's very sexist for me to say, but that's who I am. I'm sexist. But I want cat fight. We'll be very happy to show that your piece of shit client murdered this woman.
That we've collected in this case in the last several months.
Thank you. So the matter will be set.
You see if she does this number? That's like, I got you, girl. Fucking that really, this whole thing between these two lawyers right now, that's for the cameras. That is 100% for the cameras.
Will be set. Plea of not guilty has been entered on behalf of Mr. Burke. The matter will be set in Department 105. The matter is ordered assigned to Judge Charlene Almeida in Department 105 for all purposes by the judge of the supervising judge of criminal.
Generally, you say this is a high-profile celebrity, and so he's not. You remember what OJ said? I'm 100% not guilty, and they did his arraignment twice, so he could do it better the second time. Can we do another take? Can we do another take? That's exactly what happened, and so this is 100% for the cameras. 90%, 99 times out of 100, you say, Your Honor, can we just get a preliminary date? Okay, not guilty. See you later. You know, that's really how these things go. They're pro forma, but, they want to get that out there for his client.
Yes, Your Honor. If I may just put on the record, we have, as soon as the people arrived, delivered a informal discovery request consistent with Penal Code Section 1054. We have been given almost no discovery thus far. We've received a 3-page follow-up report.
It's the arraignment. It's the arraignment. You almost never get the discovery before the arraignment.
No autopsy report and a copy of the complaint. And we would ask the people respectfully to produce discovery at the earliest opportunity.
Your Honor, as I indicated to counsel, there's approximately 40 terabytes of discovery in this case.
40 terabytes of discovery. That's a lot of discovery. And here's the thing. There's no way she can review all that by the 23rd.
Moreover, in order to obtain the transcripts from a grand jury investigation, counsel has to file a motion. She knows the way the system works. I'm not able to gather those. They have to be provided after the court orders them released because it was an investigation. Second of all, if counsel plans on going to a preliminary hearing within the 10 days, it is unlikely that there will be very much discovery provided within that period, given the voluminous nature and how long it's going to take to copy onto drives. In addition to that, the coroner's report was sealed in this case in order to prevent it from hampering truthful testimony from witnesses that testified at the grand jury. So an order will also have to be obtained in order to get the coroner's department, which is now the medical examiner's department.
See, criminal lawyers and prosecutors are generally convivial, right? But you put the added celebrity nature of this case, you got to look like you're tough, And so you kind of have to go to the mat, so to speak. And that's why Blair Burke is doing this. It's for the cameras. It's not for anything else.
To release those materials.
Your Honor, it's surprising news given that the District Attorney's Office held a press conference this morning where they discussed the cause of death, apparently under seal and not released by the coroner's office, as did the robbery homicide unit to the press. So we would again reiterate, we believe that Mr.
Okay, this is what I don't like about lawyers. They feel like they have to reiterate. You've already said what you wanted. Get in, get out, get what you need, see you later.
Mr. Burke is entitled to discovery. We have served the people with notice. They have 15 days to produce discovery in this case. We would ask that they do that in conscientious earnestness and as quickly as possible.
Well, I guarantee you they will do it with conscientious earnestness. Okay. How about in a diligent fashion? How about get it to be right the fuck now? Some of this is just theater, right? But she's right. I mean, they're entitled to it. But if they're going to do it on the 23rd, that's coming up pretty fucking fast. If he was, when was he arrested? So he was arrested last Friday. So within a week, they're giving you your preliminary hearing, and you want 40 terabytes of information by then, and you want to go through all that? See, the government doesn't have to put on all their evidence at a preliminary hearing. They only need to establish probable cause, and that's it. And so you're not going to have every ounce of evidence, and it's not like we're going to try this case twice.
I'd ask the court to make an order today. We'll take a copy of the minute order ordering the Department of Medical Examiner to release their coroner's report in this case.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The court will order that the medical examiner release the report in this case forthwith.
Thank you.
The matter set in Department 105, as the court indicated, April 23rd, 2026, as a 3 of 10 p.m. Anything further? Bail to Senate, no bail. Thank you.
So he's got top-notch legal representation, but they're starting out in a hole. I don't care how fucking great your lawyer is. I don't care how beautiful your lawyer is. I don't care how expensive your lawyer is. Lawyers can't change the facts of a case. They just can't. So how are you going to get those body parts back together and make them not dismembered? Not going to happen. How do you get those body parts out of a fucking bag and, it's not going to happen. How do you get those body parts that are in a bag out of a fucking trunk? It ain't going to happen. And how do you get those body parts that were in a bag in a trunk that are in his fucking Tesla? How are you going to change that? No lawyer is going to change that. But what they can do is try to create, reasonable doubt. And that's all they have to do. And what is reasonable doubt? The amount of care that one would use in your most important of affairs, like child surgery, marriage. You want to be sure about that. But what is the standard of proof? Is it reasonable doubt? No, it isn't. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. And how much beyond a reasonable doubt is not defined by the instructions. So it's up to the jury to decide how comfortable they are with the decision that they make. And so they're in charge of how much beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, when you got married, how sure were you? Oh, I love her so much. Oh, that ex-wife is just such a bitch. No, I'm sorry. Did I say that again? No, if you're sure, you're sure. She's the one for me. What a beautiful woman, ex-wife. And so that sureness, beyond that. You got to go beyond that. And that's what people lose in that instruction. And how far beyond that is up to the jury. So let's just take a look at some more comments from the DA. And that might give us a better read on where they're coming from.
Can you clarify something? Again, it came out today, but I just want to make sure I'm accurate. Your theory of the case is that Burke allegedly lured Celeste out to this property, that she was going to report him to the police about their relationship, and that is why he killed her? And if I'm correct, how do you intend to prove that?
So the actual details of the evidence will be presented at the
You don't say that on fucking TV.
preliminary hearing and later at a trial. What we charge, though, and what the complaint charges is first-degree murder with 3 different special circumstances. The first one is lying in wait. And the allegation, as alleged in the complaint, is that Burke invited Celeste to his house the night of April 23rd, 2025, at which point he was lying in wait to murder her. The second special circumstance that was charged, and by the way, the reason you end up charging special circumstances in California is that if you have first-degree murder and you get convicted of it, it's 25 years to life.
Right.
But that allows the life sentence to be with the possibility of parole. If any one of the 3 special circumstances is found beyond a reasonable doubt by the jury, that then creates a life without the possibility of parole sentence, or if we so choose to seek it, the death penalty.
You mentioned cooperating and non-cooperating witnesses. I will tell you, people will look at this and say, okay, if the allegations are true, how on earth could David, this singer, kill this girl, dismember her body, leave it in a Tesla all by himself? There are those who say there's no way that he could have done this by himself, yet he's the only one charged.
Who are these people that are saying that? One person could certainly do that. It's not unheard of.
Are we dealing with a circumstance where there might be others involved, but they're cooperating, and if they choose not to cooperate anymore, they may be charged? Because I was listening to the press conference today. I was wondering if there's a little bit of opening that other people might be involved here.
Now, if this prosecutor, I haven't seen this, so if he says there are cooperating witnesses, that's improper for him to do that. He should just kind of defer that question. Let's see what he does.
Well, we have an ongoing investigation in the sense that if any individuals have information about Mr. Burke or anything dealing with this particular crime, please at any time reach out to the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division or the DA's office and bring us that information. With respect to any potential other individuals, as I said during the press conference, if and when we charge anybody else, and I'm not saying we will, you'll be the first to know.
So we know the theory of the case, that he lures her there to dispatch her and dismember her, and because she's threatening his career by threatening to expose a sexual relationship that he had with a child, and she's a child. Well, I killed you and I didn't even cry. Fuck. Dark, right? Really dark. And this case is dark as hell. We don't have to worry about him getting class representation because we know he has it. Blair Burke, oddly enough, the same last name, is a very accomplished, very seasoned lawyer who is a formidable opponent to anybody. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. What'll also be interesting to see is if Ms. Burke stays on this case for the duration. It's my guess, and this is just a prognostication, she will not try this case. My guess is that they're going to run out of money or she'll run out of favor for this case. She likes it now because there's a headline, and you know that's what she does. She likes these big celebrity cases. Fine. But what's going to happen down the road? Will she actually try this case? I don't think so. So we'll continue to follow this. This is David, now been indicted for murder 1 with special circumstances. And the defense has their work cut out for them. And 40 terabytes of information. Terabytes. That's a lot. So that tells me, one of the things Robert brought up was that there's ring door cameras everywhere in this neighborhood. Well, everybody's got a ring door camera nowadays, right? And so if you got a ring door camera, guess what? They collect that and they have to sift through it. Remember all the stuff that they had to go through with Nancy Guthrie? They're going to get all that information. And I think once and the defense hasn't seen this yet, right? So when you sit there, you go into court and you make these bold statements. He did not do this. There's no way he did this. And all of a sudden you get a video that shows, oh, fuck. She only goes by what her client tells her. And I don't know that I would be so bold in court like that because I don't like to say stuff that I don't know the answer to. Because if you go in there and say, my client's 100% not guilty, he was on tour in Minneapolis, and all of a sudden it shows a scuffle and it shows him putting her in the trunk. I'm not saying it does. But then guess what? You've lost all credibility from there on out. Give you one quick little story. My client tells me, I didn't know that bullet was in my pocket. I didn't know the bullet was there. He was a black preacher on the north side, right? And he was accused of shooting his ex-wife's lover. The next morning after this happened, the cops go arrest him. And they arrest him at a gas station, and it's the VCAT team, the violent crime arrest team. And they pat him down, and they put him in the back of the squad. And then they take him out, bring him to the homicide investigative room, and they pat him down, and they do an interview with him. And then they bring him over to the jail. Well, they pat him down at the jail. Oh, what do we find? They found a bullet, same caliber that killed Jimmy Willis. That's from Michael and Vinny. And he looks at him, well, I didn't know that was there. And so I'm going down the primrose path of they planted this bullet on my client. He was searched twice and they didn't find it. He goes to the homicide unit, then to the jail, and that's where they find it. Bullshit. You planted that bullet. And I was going very carefully down this path. All of a sudden, my client is on the fucking telephone. He's talking to his cousin. His cousin was sitting in the trial. Of course I knew the bullet was there. I was just being a smartass. Fuck me with a broom handle. Anything I said on that note was out the window. My credibility was shit. You know, and so that's why you got to be careful when you make bold statements. Now, it's not to a jury here. It's just to the court and to the public. But it doesn't matter for me. I mean, I want to be believed no matter where I go. So I'm careful when I make bold statements like that. So we'll continue to follow David. We'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your very own personal board-certified criminal defense lawyer, here to serve you. Hopefully you've had a little no-box wine. Hopefully you had your Chardonnay or your Pinot Grigio. Click that bell so you get notified. And follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon, go to Facebook. And here's the deal. If you go to clrbrucerivers.com, you can get all kinds of merch. You can wear my face on a sweatshirt. Holy shit. You'd be the envy of everybody in your neighborhood. We'll see you next time on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. 23-hour lockdown, please, is at my